One of the biggest questions since that first trailer from Pokémon Legends Z-A was when is the game taking place? And it looked futuristic, sure, but many of us, including myself, thought this game happens in the past. It's a Legends game, it has to be in the past, right? Well, no, just like the 3 starters don't have to be from different regions. It is a game that happens somewhere in the future, right? I was wrong, I admit it, I was wrong. But is it really in the future? So hey, I'm not so a strainer, and when is this thing taking place? Let's get into it. I'll just start this by saying, before many of you tinfoil hat enjoyers commented, yes, I will take into consideration a possible different timeline, but I'll do that on a different video. For now, let's keep the tinfoil hat well stored, kept away, and think about this without it clouding our judgment. I mean, sometimes things really are just how they seem to be, despite that being far from being the most fun way to approach everything. But here, let's try to not be fun, let's try to just follow logic. In order for us to pinpoint when this game is taking place, we first need to identify the elements that show us the passage of time. But first, identify the like, subscribe and join button to help the channel out if you don't mind. So, while at first glance there are a lot of these elements, as Lumiose City does look very different with the wild zones and all that, it's important to note that the scope of a Nintendo Switch game is definitely a more detailed version of what they could do in the 3DS era, making it so that it isn't that Lumiose City now has more buildings, it's just that now they can actually show them to us. So what else is there? And before we continue, how far do you think they went in the future? Let me know down below. The first thing we should note is how AZ has his Eternal Flower Floette. Again, ignoring all of the possible timeline shenanigans we can think of, this puts the game after the events of Pokémon X and Pokémon Y, since we do witness them reuniting after we beat the very old man in the Pokémon battle. That is nothing new, we kinda had that part down. The other big thing that points us in a direction is Lucar's office. Like I mentioned in my trailer analysis video, check that out if you haven't already, judging by the coat on the wall and the picture on the table, it is likely that it is not Lucar's office anymore, but actually Emma's office. Emma was a young girl that lived in the alleyways of Lumiose City with her only companion, an Esper named Mimi. We met her as both Emma and Essentia, which is Emma but wearing an expansion suit built and remotely controlled by Zerozik, who decided to do very weird things after the fall of Team Flare. In the end, everything ends up alright and she stays in Lucar's bureau after Lucar buys the whole building even though he is actually leaving. At the time, from the notes that we find from Zerozik's experiments, we know that Emma was 16. I don't think she would start solving crimes at 16, but I can see her doing that a few, not many, years later. But there are another few things in the new Lumiose City map that kinda tell me what I need to know in order to make a guess. Mega Evolution is so common right now that you already start with a Mega Bracelet and a Keystone, if the trailer is anything to go by. Which is weird since you don't have a Pokemon, I'd assume, but hey, such is the way of closing life, I guess. Still, back in X and Y, not even the Elite Four had access to Mega Pokemon. And we arrive in Lumiose City by train, but our train does not arrive at the Lumiose station we know of. The Lumiose station we know of is located on North Boulevard, and judging by the trailer, the one we see there is actually located on South Boulevard, meaning that is a new train station that was built from the ground up since the events of X and Y. We don't know where it leads to, might even lead to Kuriway Town and the railroad to nowhere, but we know that it would take some time for something like that to be built. Just not an ungodly amount of time. And there's also, of course, the pretty big Quasartico building as well. With Emma's very likely presence in the game, Sycamore's lab still up, Hotel Rishi seems still up as well, I think we're not that deep into the future, and I even would go as far as to say that we're kind of in a place that I would call present. Sure, we can call it near future since we're comparing it to the original games, but I do believe we're actually witnessing Lumiose City as it has evolved since 2013. I think 12 years have passed since the original Pokémon X and Pokémon Y, and maybe they'll round up that number to 10, but I do believe that 12 is going to be the number. It's important to remember that technology in the Pokemon world is 100% miles ahead of our own, meaning that all that futuristic stuff we see is not that futuristic in the actual world of the game. I mean, in Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, we were already dealing with teleporting patches inside of Silph, and that game has some pretty big years on its back already. The Holocaster was already a thing in X and Y, meaning that the Super Holocaster we see here is not a crazy upgrade at all within 12 years, same as the construction. In fact, Osman's renovation of Paris, the one many of us thought would inspire this game and its time period, took only 17 years, and that is with 1800s technology. We have Conkeldurr in the Pokemon world, things should go pretty smoothly and pretty quickly. The only thing bugging me is how AZ and his Eternal Flower Floette are being referred to. There seems to be no mystique around them or their story. Their 3,000 years of roaming the world after the war, they're probably very well documented. There's tales about them in Hoenn and all that, but nobody seems to believe them, I guess? Eternal Flower Floette is said to be 3,000 years old. AZ claims to be 3,000 years old. I mean, there's paintings of the guy he's probably taught about in history classes, and still they're doubting him somehow. There's a modern incident of that weapon being fired again that destroyed the whole town basically, and AZ showed up looking all giant in the middle of Lumiose City. Everyone saw that there was a parade, we were part of it, it was because of us, and the Floette came down from the heavens. I mean, what's going on here? Have people forgotten about that in so little time, in 12 years? It sounds strange, it sounds not very plausible. It might just be a case of it all ends well and so nobody ever questions it again. But it is strange that something so big seems not really mentioned in their descriptions on the website, almost as if it has been forgotten, which wouldn't happen in 12 years, it just wouldn't. Or almost as if it has never happened. I might just be overthinking things, of course, but that's what's been bothering me. Now, I don't want to get into crazy stuff today, so I'll stop that topic right there and say that just without tinfoil hats, without anything, looking at what we have, I believe that the game takes place in our present but the near future of Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. One might even call it a sequel, kinda like Johto was to Kanto where Black 2 and White 2 were to Black and White. More time has passed here, of course, but I think it's a good way to put it if it does end up being exactly as I said. 12 years, everyone. I guess that's it. But now, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one. But before I go, I want to thank my YouTube members Dashplays and Yahtzee, and Twitch subscribers Anubis here, Lazarix and Zanes222 for going that extra mile. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much.